Today's Mac Voices is supported by Smile and the various flavors of PDF Pen. See how PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, and PDF Pen for iOS can help you do more with your PDFs at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is going to be one of those shows that when we look back on it in a couple years, we're either going to appear brilliant or completely clueless, one of the two, because we're going to talk about foldable phones. And it's probably safe to say that none of, myself included, none of the panelists have had their hands on a foldable phone. We've seen the same photos and videos that you've seen, but this seems to be something that is catching the attention of everyone. And I'm just kind of interested to have a conversation about it and whether everyone thinks it's a good idea and why. So with that, let's find out who's here and then we'll dive into it. First up, Mr. Brett Terpstra is back. Brett, welcome. It's great to see you.
Always good to be here.
I appreciate you being here. And Mr. Mark Fuccio has joined us back from south of the equator, actually.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation to come back into the world of high tech.
Yeah, well, it's always fun. And we do have a fourth member of the panel who is either running late or has forgotten. And so if he shows up, great. And if not, well, then this will be all the wisdom you get right here. So, guys, you heard me do the introduction. I'm just kind of intrigued by this. I've read everything. I looked at everything. I looked at the pictures. And it's one of those things that I'm not quite sure why it's captured everyone's imagination. Is it just that it's something borderline brand new?
Did you ever get a iPad mini?
Yes.
Did you like that form factor?
Love the form factor.
Me too. So if my iPhone 10 Plus or like any of the plus size phones could expand to basically an iPad mini screen, I wouldn't need two devices. Like that, if it were elegant, if the thickness of the phone weren't huge, if the gap in the middle weren't a big deal, like properly done, and like you said, like none of us have actually seen any of these foldable phones in the wild. But if all that were good, I could absolutely see this being something I'd want.
Okay, so you just listed three ifs, and I can add, at least two or three more to that.
Sure, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, Mark, how about you? Does this concept appeal?
I think it does. I agree with Brett that I think people do want larger screen, larger devices, and I think the iPhone form factor sort of reached plausibly its maximum size without everybody having to have gigantic pant-sized pockets. So if there is demand out there for larger screens, how do you credibly get it? Well, some sort of expandable screen, foldable screen seems to be the only answer, and I think that's what Apple is seemingly tapping into. Because what I've noticed recently is I think this is continued evolution of use of mobile devices, and there is demand out there for iPod, iPad Mini, as well as the very large, the 12.5 or 12.9 inch screens, which are supersized. But it might be nice if something like that, instead of being a flat slate of glass and metal, if that could fold over, it'd be a little bit more ergonomic. So I think there is latent demand out there that Apple in its ways seems to be thinking ahead and thinking to anticipate.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, Brett, you mentioned the iPad Mini. In fact, just a few episodes ago, as we record this, I did a review of the Bridge keyboard for the iPad Mini, and I love it because it makes the iPad Mini that much more usable. But the thing is, a foldable phone or foldable device like this is not going to have the opportunity, I wouldn't think, for an integrated keyboard or something that could be integrated into it. The second thing I have is you mentioned a number of things. I also would be concerned about the weight because I'm not sure that I want anything much heavier than an iPhone, a large size iPhone to carry around.
Right. I mean, if the form factor is two large iPhones sandwiched together, nobody wants that. They're already big enough and heavy enough.
Right.
Like, it would require a division of the internal electronics in a way that I don't even comprehend how Samsung is doing right now. But if you could divide everything up and give me a phone that was just barely thicker than my current phone, that then folded out in a way that was sturdy enough, like, that would be my second concern. Is if you make it thin enough to work folded, how thin is it going to be when it's unfolded, like folded out? And will we be looking at a whole new like bend gate? Can it bend too far? And and the seam in the middle, is it going to wear out? Like, these are questions I have about Samsung's phone.
Okay, so let's table Samsung's phone just for a moment, because I think here that I think Apple may actually come out with a thicker phone and redefine thin, in that
Right.
the thinner of the unfolded dimension will be thinner than any existing iPhone, but when it's sandwiched together, it obviously will be thicker, and certainly weight in ergonomics is going to be an important part of that. That it's going to need to be balanced, so it doesn't, it's not, something that will slip or fall, or bend, or want to tilt in any particular way. I think maybe we should just step back a little bit and define terms by what we mean by a foldable phone, and it seems implicitly here we have this idea of it's a device that will be like oh, I don't have my phone here, it's in the other room. We'll have a phone that will open up so we get double the screen size.
Right.
And I think the Samsung device is a little bit of a hack because it really has three screens. It has one screen that you see, and then it has the two screens that are adjacent to each other when it opens up. And that's really a hack, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's whatever it is, $1,980 or so. Is you have to pay for three very expensive screens on the device. I think Apple, it would be great if they are doing such a thing, have it so that you have one resolution, and then if you open it up, all of a sudden, boom, you can get twice the screen size, because cost is one of the factors, in addition to weight. The other thing I think is also going to be battery life. There's going to be more pixels there, more pixels to process, and additional battery drain. So we'll have to see if they can get an all-day, 10-day, 10 or 12 hour battery life, which seems to be the bogey that they've set themselves, for releasing these devices.
Here's the thing with the phone you're describing, though, the idea that, so you're looking at the front of the phone, and then like the back would open out and it would double the width of the screen, right?
Yes.
So then what's folded across the back is also a screen. Your phone is all screen, and there's no way to put a case on it and have it still work.
That's another one of these trade-offs that they're going to have to be making.
The logistics there, the potential for damage and slipperiness. The only reason I use a case on my iPhone 10 is not for fear of scratching it. It's because it's too slippery for me to hold with any sweat on my hands.
Well, again, Apple, this is pure speculation. This may,
I know, we're playing devil's advocate.
Fast, yeah, but again, I think more importantly, I think the use case is that I think people would like something with a larger display that has the portability of something they can slip in pants or coat pocket.
And I don't disagree with that. The other thing, though, to the way you're describing it, Mark, one of my concerns, and we'll talk about others, but one of my concerns is just the wear on that wraparound edge.
Mm-hmm.
That's because that basically will have to be part of the screen, whether it's activated or not activated. And that's where you're going to get a lot more just taking it in out of a pants pocket or a pocketbook or however you carry your phone. There's naturally going to be a lot more wear there. So now are you going to have this big discolored or scratched up or whatever stripe down the center of your gorgeous screen?
Same
I
with
hope
on
not.
the inside, though.
I hope not. I mean, Apple has certainly materials and quite a metallurgical challenge ahead of them. We'll have to see. Yeah, and I think if they don't have good answers to any of these things, I don't think they'll want such a device.
You can't bend something repeatedly. You can't bend any material repeatedly and not begin to wear at that fold.
Well, be careful. I don't think, if they have a hinge, you may describe the word bend, but I don't think that would be
But is the
accurate from
screen
a material
itself hinged? The screen is an adhesive layer, from what I read. It's an adhesive layer. It's still bending.
Don't know. Again, don't know. That's that may be true of a Samsung device. Don't know if that would be true of an Apple device.
If you could find a way around that, I would pay maybe $1,900 for it. Just kidding. Obviously, that I would.
But Mark, that's where I might disagree with you just a little bit. That the 3-screen that it's the Samsung model, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That appeared to be more viable to me because now I have a phone that looks like a phone. That I have the screen right there, and then when I want that larger screen, I unfold it, and I have my nice big screen that's inside and has been protected because it has been folded. I mean, that too, there could still be a crease there, but the odds of it showing the same kind of wear and tear, I think, are a bit less. And so, but then, as you said, you get to the expense of 3 screens or 2 screens, one small, one large, in this device.
Isn't fantasy a wonderful thing?
But let's talk about the price point, though. All the journals and the stock market showed that it may have been a mistake for Apple to price the 10s and the 10R where they did. Too high a price point, they said. It slowed sales down. But then everyone is coming out with phones. Samsung across the line raised their prices. So it became the $1,000 mark didn't become as far-fetched. And now these foldable phones, like Samsung's is $1,980, but Huawei's is $2,600, I think.
Yep.
These phones are extending into price points that would have been previously unimaginable. No, you asked even 2 years ago. You say, would you pay $1,000 plus for a phone? And most people would have said no. And Apple forged this new path into charging exorbitant amounts. And now everyone's following suit. And that, I don't know what that says. Is that going to work?
I don't think those phones are the bulk of sales. So, there are. I think in any type of market, you'll see that there is always a demand that for a higher priced product that has unique features that justify the price point. But that's not to be confused with where the volume sales leaders are. So I think to your comment, just I'll take a cheap shot that the pundits, the talking heads, and the Wall Street analysts, all they've been bitching about for forever, it seems, is the iPhone is too high price and need to come out with a lower priced one. So that's just commentary. Just ignore it. I think the reality is that Apple did show that there is demand for higher priced phones that that are feature laden at higher price points, and Samsung is following suit.
Was the 10R more successful than the 10s?
I don't know.
I believe it was. I believe the lower price point really appealed to people.
Okay, so this is one of my pet peeves, though, and we're all doing it, including me. We're calling these devices phones, and I wish they could. I honestly almost wish Apple would come out with
Hmm.
a different name for them, because if a phone, I mean, you can go and get a phone in the strictest sense, for a nickel 98. I mean, it just, that's not it. But as Mark did say, these are complex feature laden devices with cameras that get better and better. We now have computational photography included in these things. They are, we're back to Steve's old thing, a music player, an internet communicator, and a phone. And it's gone so far beyond that. Now with all the other sensors in there, you can do all kind of amazing things with these. So it's a we call it a phone, but it's no longer just a phone.
It's a foldable computer. I mean, that's
Well,
reality.
I mean,
I mean,
this
I
is
mean,
this is a computer,
yes.
and the new ones would be a foldable. But at the same time, even with that price point, I can buy two. Buy two of these, or I could buy. Frankly, I could buy one of these and a decent iPad, and still come out ahead. If price wise, I would still have two devices I'd have to carry. But
But I think that's how Apple in part will probably be justifying the price is, this equals, a phone plus a tablet, and it's even better at a lower price than having, two devices and, better utility, than carrying two devices around, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I'm really looking at this is, yes, I mean, it is a misnomer to call these things phones, but unfortunately, that's the term everyone's using. So, we're sort of stuck with it. But one thing I did see from my recent vacation trip is I think more and more people are using these for camera devices for both video as well as still, and they're sharing them. And it's awful hard to share on the small form factor. A bigger screen would be much more natural and conducive. So. Um, I think that's really, the sort of pent up demand, that, well, actually, speculation on pent up demand that people have. Because remember, there was once the talk about, do people really want bigger phones? Are they going to carry them around? Well,
I didn't think I did. Turns out.
I agree with you. I didn't. My wife had a big Samsung, and I was very, very, very careful. What was it? I guess the iPhone 6 was the first one, and looking at that, and turns out I like the much bigger form factor. Something bigger would be more convenient, but again, I don't have pocket space for it.
Right.
Hence,
Start to
we're
pull
on
your
this
jeans down
foldable
after a
discussion.
while.
well, and I'm with you both, and that's why I said at the outset, in a couple of years we're going to look back at this discussion, and we may have to eat some crow, or we may be brilliant. I don't know which, because I really like the idea of having a larger screen available to me, but I don't want to lose the one-handed utility of
Mhm.
this device. It's just,
So, Chuck, would a foldable device would that address these concerns for you?
well, if it were done right, Mark. But we're back to
Okay, yeah.
the
Imagination.
yeah. I mean, and that's we also should point out that Apple has not announced anything. We have no idea if
But they
Apple's
do
working.
have patents approved.
Okay, that's good.
They a couple years ago they got a patent approved and they renewed it for 2020.
Okay, interesting. I was not aware of that. So then, but Apple also patents a lot of things.
Oh, they patent everything, crazy stuff. But they do have a foldable phone patent.
But I mean, there was a time that if Apple didn't, oh my God, if Apple didn't include near field communication, NFC, well, they were going to be out of business. And oh my
Sure.
God, if Apple didn't make a netbook, they were going to be out of business.
And if Apple doesn't have 5G in time for Christmas, yeah.
I mean, we can just go right down the list of crises that the so-called experts have predicted, and Apple doesn't have a problem bucking the trend when there's a good reason to buck it,
or waiting it out.
What or that, yeah, that's true.
I don't think Apple coming to market with a foldable phone a year after Samsung really hurts their bottom line at all.
Or even
Especially
2
given
years.
the record of their record of doing it better. I imagine they would come out at a price point closer to Huawei's than Samsung's and have a $2,500 device. But
Again, I think here it's really critical that they need to solve some of these engineering issues so that they really do have a premium device that has no compromises. Because the Huawei, it seems like some of the images I've seen, it seems there when it folds, you see a seam right down the center.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's ugly. I mean, just
and it's worth it to wait and see what all the problems are and then come out with a phone that fixes those. That's, I mean, all the way back to the first iPod. That's what Apple's done, and they've done it well.
correct.
Okay, so I'm right now I'm in the position of playing devil's advocate. But the one thing that about my larger screens on my iPads is that I want some kind of case to put them at a convenient hands-off viewing angle. And I'm having a hard time visualizing, and most of those cases or stands or whatever will integrate into or onto the phone, or excuse me, onto the iPad,
Mm-hmm.
so that they're always available. They're with me,
Right.
They're protecting my device, but it's not like I have to reach in my pack or in my pocket or whatever and pull something out. I went through that stage for a while, and you never take it with you. I mean, it looks like a great idea, and boy, that'd be really convenient, and it never happens. And so this device, I'm trying to visualize even how you would build in something that would allow it to be propped portrait or landscape.
Do you have a smart keyboard on an iPad Pro?
Yes.
You know how that has to fold out like 3 times to get into a stand position?
Right.
Imagine doing all of that and then unfolding the device for a 4th fold. Like, no existing case solution makes sense. Anything that wrapped around would just be an infinite amount of unfolding to get into a usable position. And as far as like case protection for in a half like phone shape, nothing would provide what a case does and still make it usable.
Yes.
So there's a whole new market here for people to reinvent the phone case and the phone keyboard and other accessories. I have no idea how it would be done, though.
Well, would it be up to Apple to do it and build it into the phone in some I mean, you're talking, because everything you just said, Brett, makes sense. I should have had an origami expert on the show. But if you add all that stuff in the fold somehow, it's going to increase the thickness.
Yeah.
And there's no way around that.
It's not going to be convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, all of Apple's current devices, they brag about how thin it is, X the case. So the case always adds additional weight and thickness, etc. And this is, I think, part of the challenges that Apple's going to have, and in coming out with a device, because I think unless they have some sort of protective case, I think that will be something that people will complain and moan about, and actually be retardant to sales, because I'm amazed everywhere I go all over the world. People have cases for their phones. It's only a minority, probably 1 or 2%, who seem to be using phones bare. Everybody else, as I say, all over my travels, in Central and South America, as well as around the U.S., people have cases.
Well, it's such a way that such a personalization thing. I mean, it's not just protection or even features. It's just, okay, my favorite football, basketball, baseball, soccer, hockey, team has a case, or my favorite designer has a case, or I like the look of wood or stone, or sometimes I just like plain old plastic, or I like the bright color. Maybe because it differentiates my phone from somebody else's. Those are all reasons I hear for people putting on cases.
I would not add bulk to my phone just as a fashion thing. I would maybe consider a skin or a sticker, but like the only reason, like I said, the only reason I would ever have a case is for either protection or slipperiness. And in my case, it's just slipperiness. Mm-hmm. And I would far prefer to have a bare phone.
but you're a geek, okay? And everybody
Hey,
here, well,
hey.
everybody here qualifies that. I'm right there with you. You know,
Obvious.
I can't imagine, doing something for style, and yet I know a ridiculous number of people, and I should say not just women, because I think sometimes that's where a lot of us assume that the fashion thing is. I know a lot of guys that, their football team is their football team, and they have tattoos of their team logo, and they have the phone with the
Mugs
logo,
and yes, and
and,
cases and
and
everything else.
screensavers. Yeah, you name it. So
So
I
I
don't
have
know.
I have a question here. Just bringing up iPad. What's the role of this? Do you think there is a role or a future for having a smart pencil support within the phone? And if so, what does that mean in the context of this foldable device that we've been exploring?
There was these old things called PDAs.
I
That
used to have one.
I think that I'm going to coin a new
Palm
term here
Pilot,
for all
right?
these powerful
Palm Pilot.
devices.
The guys who got their ass kicked by the iPhone.
And they had styluses that would slide into the body of the digital assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the whole idea of a foldable phone is a callback in itself. Like flip
I used to
phones.
have a StarTAC, a Motorola phone, and I loved it. It's very, very thin, and that was just purely a phone, right? It had that little 1-inch square screen that you're supposed to use oh, you can view the web. Well, that's when people
Oh,
used to
the
say
brew
WAP
systems.
is
Yeah.
WAP is crap because this was all the device days of the mobile web, just pre iPhone era. But it was a thin, small device, which was really great, because it easily fit in your pocket until we all just evolved into wanting bigger devices because we could do more compute-like functions on them.
I got a razor. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
didn't have a. Did I have a razor? No, I don't think I had a razor, but I had a StarTech too. And I want to go back to something Brett said earlier. That's a hinge, and
Yes.
obviously hinge technology has improved since then, but it was not uncommon to see broken StarTechs because somebody flexed the phone too hard or pushed it to their head too far. And I'm looking at thinking about a $2,000 to $2,600 phone that somebody isn't paying attention like we all do in day-to-day use and opens it too far or stretches it too far, and then what happens? And
You
how
made a
tough
good
can
case for Apple Care. It's insurance and it's treating your device.
And you've launched the HingeGate YouTube series.
You're holding it wrong. You're folding it wrong.
You're folding it wrong.
Well played.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, guys, so let's do this. Mark, it sounded like you had a bit of disdain for what I will call an outside fold, or no, excuse me, for the inside fold. Do you prefer the outside fold, or did I have it?
I'm not sure how we're defining things.
Well, let's say that I had a.
Is it one screen that wraps around the outside, or a second screen that's revealed when you unfold it?
Okay, so this is my Mac, my iPad Mini with the bridge keyboard. Okay, so to my mind, an outside fold would be you open it this way, and you have the screen out here. The inside fold would be you do that, and you have the fold or the screen in here.
Oh, I suppose I'm thinking of something sort of size aside. Maybe imagine this is the size of a little little iPhone that you can see that, and then just by unfolding this way, you double the amount of screen real estate in some sort of magical way where there's no seam or pixels or everything else. That's sort of the concept I have in mind.
Okay. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Smile at smilesoftware.com, the makers of world-class software. PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro from Smile are the tools I rely on to create, edit, and modify PDF documents. Everyone from the Fortune 100 corporations down to your kid's soccer club use PDFs. And that's exactly why you need PDF Pen. PDF Pen lets you take those PDFs and correct mistakes, make notes, and add audio notes to them. You can do something as simple as combining two PDFs into one, or as sophisticated as running optical character recognition to turn them into editable text, ready for copying into a different document or program. You can watermark your PDFs, and not just stamp a graphic or watermark on them, but create something custom, an image or text block that can be made semi-transparent and can be made to appear behind the text. Headers and footers used to be just for word processing documents, but PDF Pen lets you create either or both for your PDFs, so you can add page numbers and decide what the range of pages the numbers appear on. Line art and logos can be selected, moved, and modified to your liking, or eliminated altogether. Images can be resized as you wish. And of course, if you need to redact a word or block of text, you can do so totally and securely, without having to worry that someone might get to that information. Perhaps best of all, PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro just keep getting better. New capabilities are added regularly to make sure that you have all the control of your PDFs that you want. PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro are available directly from Smile at smilesoftware.com. Download demo versions today and find out just what you can do with your PDFs that you didn't think was possible. And while you're there, check out all the other great Smile productivity apps, like Text Expander for Mac, Text Expander for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, and PDF Pen Scan Plus OCR. All from Smile at smilesoftware.com, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for their support of MacVoices. And our wayward Mac jury panelist here has joined us, Mr. Andrew Orr from the Mac Observer. Andrew, welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And I especially wanted to see if I could get you on this panel because you wrote an article for the Mac Observer expressing your feelings about a foldable phone. And so I'll let you play a little catch up here and tell us what you think about the foldable phones and why.
Yeah, I mean, right now at this point, it seems kind of gimmicky to me. I mean, I think it's great that we've been able to get this far to have foldable phones because I distinctly remember reading about the possibility back in like 2010, I think. But like what I'm picturing in my head just seems kind of awkward. I mean, I'm imagining, like my iPhone folding in half, and it would just look like this, kind of weird square tablet, which seems kind of weird. That would introduce a whole different form factor for developers. And the phones that I saw that were released seem really bulky too. And if Apple were to do this, they would have to make their foldable screen like half as thin just to get it to keep the same thinness as iPhones today. So right now, I don't really see the utility in it, I guess.
Okay. So we were just talking about the in-fold versus or inside fold versus outside fold. I mean, I guess Mark, you bring up an interesting point that method of outside fold. Yeah, that's an outside fold any way you take it, because then the what normally would be the back of the device would fold out and become part of the screen. Whereas if you had something more like the one model we're seeing, the prototypes we're seeing, like a book that you would have a screen on the outside as your normal phone, but then you would open it up like a book, and then that would be your larger screen.
Well, that might be the inside fold. Also, I think that was Huawei's concept phone out there is also one of these folds the same way. So I'm just thinking that imagination run wild. That the idea of a device that's that's thin and you can fold it in some fashion and automatically double the amount of screen real estate. I think to me that's the ultimate goal I think anything short of that just seems like a hack, and I agree maybe with Andrew that just doesn't have enough utility to justify launching it as a product.
Okay, so how about something that we haven't talked about, or we sort of passed over, and that is cameras. Front cameras, back cameras.
Well, interestingly, I think sort of this natural extension. If it's going to be asymmetrical, so either phone can come out, I think it's going to require having multiple cameras and probably that they be symmetric. I mean, I think probably right now it's just a cost issue of why they have different quality or caliber phones on the front face or back face of the phone, or iPad for that matter.
Okay.
So the Galaxy Fold has 6 cameras across the back, front, and the inside of the phone. I don't know how those are split up. Do you?
No, I don't.
No.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything. I saw that, Brett, that had 6 cameras, which definitely drives the price up. But how are they positioned, and what uses are they for? I mean, why?
Right. And like Mark said, what defines in this, if it's an inside fold and you have what's essentially 2 different screens, which one is going to be where the high quality camera is going to go? Where's your portrait camera going to go? Which side?
That's why I think they're symmetric.
Yeah, it would make sense. I could see the argument for that.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, this is a higher end device at a higher price point. So I don't think people would mind this pure speculation, but clearly there's the experimentation that Apple's done to show that there is demand at significantly higher price point. I think they get away with it for having this beautiful device we are collectively creating in our imaginations. So I want to go ask Andrew a question, because the way you said things, it seemed to me you mix a little bit commentary about the concept versus implementation challenges, especially those present in the Samsung show car model device. What do you think about the concept? Engineering challenges, etc. Tabled for the moment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that engineering challenge. They had special materials they would need. I thought a while ago, I had read this rumor of this MacBook. I think maybe it was a patent where it would have this special keyboard that would be the keys would be directly in the surface of it, like they wouldn't be separate from it. So maybe they could use that type of technology. I haven't actually seen the videos of the phones. I've just seen pictures.
Yes.
But all that aside, if none of that mattered and you could absolutely have a great foldable phone, would you want it?
I don't think so. Just because, it seems to me Apple doesn't really like in between devices. You could argue that the iPad is in between the phone and the MacBook, but this foldable phone would seem like in between a phone and a tablet. And I think I would rather have them separate. That way they could be the best at what they do instead of.
But by that logic, wouldn't you be able to say that the iPad mini is in between the phone and a tablet?
Yeah.
I think Apple does it.
Mm-hmm. But we saw that with the introduction of big phones, the iPad mini kind of got swallowed up by that. So yeah, I'm wondering.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. It's been out there. True, it hasn't been updated, but it's been out there for years. So it hasn't demand for it hasn't disappeared.
And if you go back and I know we talked about it on MacVoices, but there are plenty of people that did. When the Mini came out, everybody's favorite iPad became the Mini.
Mhm.
because it was not as bulky. It was, it was a lot more portable. And then Apple brought out the supersized iPads, and it's funny how all of a sudden everybody went that direction. And the
I
middle
went that
size iPad,
direction, but I regret
sorry,
it.
oh,
I got the biggest iPad Pro, and all I want now is an iPad Mini.
well,
I
there you
miss
go.
it. I still think there's a place for them.
I mean, and interesting. It's funny you say that, Brett, because there are a lot of people that prefer the smaller iPhone models, that they're gravitating, down,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that and it so much depends on what you're doing with it. If you're using it as a phone and as maybe a little more of a casual device, then the smaller one makes more sense, from every angle. But if you're trying to, do some other things with it, then larger.
Sure, and that's why I like the idea of a moderately sized phone and then a device like the iPad Mini for more content consumption. Like I don't want to watch videos on a smaller phone. I want to watch it on something iPad Mini size, which is where, to me, a foldable phone starts to fill that gap.
Brett, remind me, the screen size of an iPad Mini is what? It's 6.5 or 7 inches?
6.5 sounds right. I can't recall.
Okay.
But and 6.5 is what the Samsung folds out to.
Yes.
Okay, so this is an iPad Mini. Well, actually, hold on. Yeah, I had that right. Yeah,
Mhm.
this is an iPad Mini, and this is an iPhone.
10.
It's 10. It's not the larger one. It's the smaller one. Okay,
Right.
so take it that way, or take it that way. If you fold it here, you just about get there.
Almost.
Yeah, kind of rough. You just about get there. So,
Well, I think it was Andrew who said we're talking about a whole new form factor for developers too, because you're not going to make a phone at a size that's going to fold out to a nice 16:9.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it would, like, what I'm imagining, if it was perfectly matched on all sides, it would be a square. So I'm wondering how that aspect ratio would work.
Or your good old 3x4, 4x3.
Right. That's a fair concern. I mean, developers are currently developing for 8 different size screens and 3 different resolutions, and yeah, everyone's going to have to make everything very, very flexible.
Let's go back there. Mark asked it, and I think we got lost. It got lost a little bit. But where does an Apple Pencil-like device fit into this scenario? Does it at all?
It may not. I mean, it may be that there's no easy way, to unless you want to subject yourself to having to carry that thing around separately, which is sort of an albatross around the concept of this device. That if the selling point of this device is expandable screen area on demand, then basically, front and center is what you do with the screen. You see stuff, you can consume stuff. Maybe you have some limiting editing capabilities, a la what people are doing now with with iPads. So I think that becomes the reason for being for this device. And again, conceptually, one of the reasons this is exciting to me is I think what we've seen Apple do is with handoff and all these other technologies, they're blurring the separateness of an iOS and Mac OS device, and so you can interchange data and start an email on one and finish on the other, or share links, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Something like this, I think, is also erasing some of that boundary line between a small phone device and whatever the next bigger thing up is. And I think it's worthy experimentation. If people, if they're just joining now, go back to the beginning, because we talk a lot about the engineering challenges that Apple have in creating a acceptable device. But I think it's worthy experimentation, because I find the concept very, very, very intriguing, and we'll just have to see if the material science and everything else is such that they can actually make something that sets up to the high standards we're collectively creating for a specification for a device in this show.
Well, we're asking, I'm not sure we're creating specifications. We're asking a lot of questions and what the preferences would be and what the trade-offs would be.
I should rather say requirements.
We're
Yeah,
presenting all of the potential problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's a requirement. It needs to have a solution. It needs to have more than a 2-hour battery life, and it needs to have some sort of case solution. It needs to have some sort of seamless ability to have the bigger screen available. It can't look horrible and scuffed up. Think of the piano black Surface experiment of the iPhone a couple years ago. So I think Apple's learned a lot, and it just may be Samsung is just one of these concept cars, right? So, I remember when a kid, where's my backpack? Where's my backpack? Foldable phones just may be like that. It's just concept that never actually has technology to actually implement it. But I think it's a worthy try.
So let me go just a little controversial, because this would be very un-Apple-like, but because you could not use it for video consumption across the entire device. But would it make sense to have two separate screens with an honest to God hinge in the middle kind of thing, so that you sort of like having two monitors on your desktop? Does that appeal to anyone?
Wait, on opposite sides?
Yeah, so that if you did our fold,
if you did fold, it would be more of like a 16:9, and you open it, it might be a 4:3 form factor. Is that
no? I'm saying that this would be a screen and this would be a screen, and you would have a definite, honest to God.
But they're not unified, so you would drag from one desktop to another kind of thing.
Yeah, that you could do that, or you could just use it as a multiple monitor kind of setup.
No, I don't want that.
I don't want that.
Okay. I'm asking, because I know how many times I'm using split screen with my larger iPads, and and it is extremely useful to have, if nothing else, just two apps open side by side. And so
yes, then I guess the reason that works for me on iPad and not on my phone is because I don't do things on my phone that I need split screen.
Right.
Right now,
if suddenly that were a possibility, if the phone were designed to split into two screens, run side by side apps, maybe. I currently have trouble imagining wanting to do that on my phone, wanting to do that on anything smaller than a 12-inch screen. 11.
But again, Apple tends not to build special purpose devices. So I think building a special hardware device for split screen, while possible, is probably not a direction they would take.
I would agree with that assessment, Mark. It's one of those things that if you sort of embrace the obvious, that you get away from all the problems we talked about earlier and just say, okay, we're going to have two screens on this. Is that a viable device in today's world?
That might be the Samsung solution.
Can you just get two phones and
duct tape. Yeah. Andrew, one thing that was in your article, you pointed out that Steve Wozniak has some thoughts on this, and I want to make sure we include that here.
Yes, he had an interview with, I think it was Bloomberg, where he said that he wanted a foldable iPhone, and he thinks that Apple should do that, and he talked about innovation, and Apple might be dragging in that area. So, I mean, it was just saying he was a fan of the concept.
And I don't want to say I'm not necessarily a fan of the concept. There's so many questions I have about it and about its usability that I don't know. I want to see it, and what I've seen so far does not impress me that much. But I also haven't seen a product designed by Apple.
Another thing for me is I'm a big fan of Apple's rumors about augmented reality and their possible AR headset. I think that would be more likely to them releasing a foldable iPhone. And I think if they did that, then they could just kind of jump right over the foldable part and just have the screen be, right in front of your eyes.
Agreed.
Good one. That's, yeah.
Screens become irrelevant when you get into AR. Like the world is your screen, and even like holographic displays and things like that. To me, getting stuck in how big can we make a screen in someone's pocket is already a passé conversation. We should be talking way bigger. We should be talking world size.
Yes.
Right. And don't forget, there a couple of years ago, there was the talk about curved screens, for phones. So maybe everyone has this wrong, and Apple's going to come out with quality immersive glasses.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Or maybe what if they just made a Apple Watch with a foldable screen, or at least so it could be more flexible.
It's like it folds out on your wrist?
Maybe, or maybe the screen would just like curve around your wrist a little.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Somebody had one of those or something like it. I can't remember who did that, but it was almost like a big chunky bracelet.
Yeah, so didn't Fitbit have something like that? Or was it an Android watch?
I think it was an Android of some sort.
I don't know. I don't think it was one of the, I could be wrong. I don't think it was one of the major manufacturers.
Huh.
But it looked like something out of a sci-fi series from, the 80s or 90s. Like, okay, this is what we envision, risk communication will be.
We can manage our recipes on our wrist.
Yeah.
I want to hold my wrist up, tap to answer the phone call, and have a holographic head of the person I'm talking to floating in front of me. That doesn't seem that far-fetched. We can do this.
I don't want that, because then I've got to walk around like this, looking at them. If I put them down to the side, then they're going to be, down at my side.
People said the same things about headphones, and then about cell phones, and and the idea of using augmented reality, so everyone's looking at their phones on the street. You get used to it. Did you see her? You get used to it.
Okay. I'll take your word for it, Brett. I just know how much of a hassle it is for me to answer something on my watch.
Yeah.
For 10 minutes and have this conversation.
Yeah, the Dick Tracy novelty wears off after a few minutes of holding your wrist up.
Oh no, I still get amazed whenever, I avoid missing a phone call from my wife, and I can catch it on my my cell phone. Sorry, on my iWatch or my iPad. And again, we're just talking about merging the environment of these devices. So, I think it's people want a great experience. They want it on their device that they have with them now, and they'll invest in different sized devices for different capabilities. But here, let me throw another question out there, just since we're on this. If something like this were to come to be, would it be before or after merging of or tighter merging of Mac OS and iOS? Again, I'm just stirring stuff up.
When you say something like this comes to be, what do you mean?
The foldable device.
I'm not sure.
Again, I'm thinking. Again, it seems to me it's part of blending of all these environments together.
Yeah, it's a sore spot for me. I don't like the direction the blending is going. So maybe
which direction, Brett, do you not like?
I don't like what's happening to Mac OS.
I agree with that.
I don't like the direction that is going. If iOS wants to continue to become more and more awesome on its own, great. and your foldable phone can run your iOS, but leave my Mac OS.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Apple, we don't want you as a nanny telling us what we can and can't do on our Macs.
Yes.
Oh, whoa! Wait a minute! I gotta take issue.
Okay, I'm stirring stuff up, obviously.
Yeah, you
Let's
are.
do
Yeah,
it.
you are. So Brett, what are you talking about, the walled garden thing, or what are you talking about?
I'm talking about how much marzipan scares me. All the new apps that came with Mojave, the news app, and I don't remember what else. There were 4 apps. What were they?
Stocks, maps,
News.
Home.
news, and
What was that, Andrew?
The home
Oh,
app.
home. Yeah. Like, these apps are not quality Mac apps. They're apps designed to run on both iOS and Mac as basically prototype for the future of apps, universal apps, but they are not good Mac apps.
Hey, Brett,
Fail. Yes.
you'll get used to it.
Oh.
Hey, Brett, resistance is futile.
Oh, you're hurting me now.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a developer, so I can't really say whether this is good or not. I mean, I would think that it would be a positive thing because it potentially opens up Mac apps or some Mac apps to a much wider audience. Is that just a misperception of mine?
I think so. I think it's more about making iOS apps run on Mac.
Right. Well, and
Mac
apps.
That's the way I view Marzipan. I haven't heard anything that seems to indicate it will make it easier to flow in the opposite direction.
Yeah, Mac apps that would run on iOS would have to be written pretty crippled to begin with. If you were writing it with the intention of, you'd basically have to be writing like an Electron app or React Native app that only used system capabilities that were consistent between the two devices.
But do you think that it's more likely that, is it more likely that a developer would be willing to write something for the iPad knowing that it could also find a home on the Mac?
Maybe. But you can currently write an app for the Mac and then write a companion app for the iPhone and get paid twice.
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah, because that's what I was wondering too. I had written about this too, and my question was, how would pricing work? Because would you have this? You would have this universal app that works on all Apple's devices. So would that be Mac app priced or iOS app priced? Because I think if it was iOS app priced cheaper, that would hurt Mac developers. Or maybe it would just be subscription based, like Apple is pushing everyone towards.
Yeah, but either way, you're paying one price for 2 platforms then. I think that hurts.
Yeah.
Or you're paying one price for not compatible platforms, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I suppose if they are literally the same platform and it's just a matter of what device you're running it on, that will change things. If iOS and macOS truly become compatible, like such that one app that runs on your phone also runs on your Mac, then pricing becomes a different beast.
Right, but that would be, to me, that would be a god awful, ugly situation, because multitasking, so called, is better on the iPad because I can split multiple windows, but still nothing like on the Mac where I can have dozens of windows,
right?
And, all sorts of things. So I'd hate to see the iOS vision emerge supreme, because I think that's just horrible and too restrictive.
I agree, but maybe we're old.
Well, no, I mean, I think it comes down to functionality. I think iOS still has a ways to go for obvious reasons until it reaches the Mac stage.
As you kindly pointed out earlier, I am a geek.
Yeah.
And there are things I do with my Mac that I don't imagine iOS would or could ever allow. And
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to see those capabilities go away.
Well, but we're back to an old discussion of, are we the people, the four of us, the people that Apple is developing new products for, or are
we're the most important people Apple is developing new products for? I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I buy a new Mac almost every 4 years, so.
Yeah. I don't know. Brett, to your point, you can write a Mac app and then write a companion iOS app. So would it be horrible to have the app launch and say, what am I running on? I'm running on an iPad. Okay, I'm going to look like this, and I'm going to have this feature set, which is notably smaller or more restricted than on the Mac side. And if I'm
at that point, you've got two different apps you've just packaged into one app bundle.
But you've also
what's the point at that point? Why not just have a licensing system that says if you own this on the iPhone, you own this on the Mac, and they're two different apps. So
well, but you have customers who shop for only one app, so that if it's, I don't know, a note-taking app, then okay, I've got this great note-taking app, and at least in theory, most of the interface elements should be familiar, and a lot of the commands should be familiar, and it would ideally.
But again, from a developer's perspective, you've already developed two apps. You've developed one for one feature set and one for another feature set. You're basically saying if you buy a license for this, you now have a Mac app and an iOS app. And it's not the same as having one app that runs everywhere, because my development time was still basically put into developing two different platforms.
Well, then you would price it accordingly.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I mean,
will people pay for $60 plus apps?
Well,
yeah,
but
not on iOS, and I think that's a danger of Marzipan is actually Marzipan is bringing iOS apps into Mac, so it's expanding that environment. But clearly price of software is seemingly collapsed since volume sales of iOS devices, and that's just not good for a lot of developers. I mean, I think the bubble has burst of I'll make a fortune making iOS apps. That there's a handful of companies that are doing it, but it's not it's not a lot. It's not the huge volume of people out there, and also the downward pressure on software in general is such that I know Mac OS developers who once could have a decent living now have maybe a third of a decent living just due to pricing pressures and changes on the Mac OS environment.
Yeah,
but could Marzipan be something that breaks that log jam of the low pricing? That if developers now, that means kind of everybody has to get together and understand and agree and educate the public that now you're buying a much more sophisticated package in the application that is going to run on two devices, and therefore it deserves more of your money.
I don't see anything different happening than when the iTunes App Store began its race to the bottom, when 99-cent apps became the norm. It wasn't like a general consensus among all app developers. We should all be pricing our apps at $1 or less. It was they were dragged down by a minority of crappier, lower priced apps. And that's absolutely the first thing that's going to happen if you have an app store that's selling Marzipan apps, this will also run on your Mac. It's going to be a race to the bottom right away.
Yes. And we'll have cow fart apps.
Yeah. A whole new batch of cow fart apps.
Yes.
Yeah. Just what we need. Guys, I don't know if we've solved anything here. It's interesting to hear, though, the different use cases, different thoughts on the way it all goes. And as we said, in a few years, we'll either look like geniuses or idiots, one of the two, depending on what comes out and what becomes popular. So as we exit, let's go around the room and let folks know where they can find you. And Andrew, I'll put you up first since you were last in, so I want to make sure that folks know where they can find you and read more of what you do.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, I write for the Mac Observer. You can find that at macobserver.com. You can find me on Twitter. My username is Andrew or Not, and the end of that is ORNOT.
And you show up once in a while on the Daily Observations podcast.
Actually, I show up a lot more. So I'm on there several times a week.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. You have a thing for Facebook, don't you?
Yes, me and Kelly, we've been talking about Facebook and security a lot.
Good to have you. Thanks so much. Sorry you came in late, but glad you got your 2 cents in.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, how about you?
Easiest way is Twitter at Mark Fuccio, MarkFuccio, all lowercase. All together.
Great. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
Last but absolutely not least, Mr. Brett Terpstra.
I can be found writing at brettterpstra.com with 3 T's in the middle, and pretty much everywhere else as TTScoff, TTSCOFF, Twitter, GitHub, Last.fm. Ello, is that still a thing? As everywhere. I have a consistent username.
Hello?
Ello? ELLO?
Is that still around?
I hope not. I think it just turned into a bunch of porn bots.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. We just did an advertisement for a bunch of porn bots. Thanks, Brett. Good job. Good job.
What do I do?
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And if you have thoughts on foldable phones, in-fold, out-fold, side-fold, cameras, anything, drop me an email at chuck@macvoices.com. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit macvoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Mac Voices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple Tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/macvoices and join these folks who help keep Mac Voices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.